Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wowhead Weekly number 244. For today's show, we have a very special guest, but before she is introduced, let's talk a little bit about what has happened in the past week. We're getting closer and closer to the pre-patch, although date has not been 100% confirmed yet. We will talk about that. On top of that, we had another episode of Afterlives coming out, Afterlives Ardenweald, which we will definitely talk about as well. And we also have the big Ian post, which is very interesting and definitely worth talking about. Before we go into anything though, let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Annie, or also known as Annie Fuchsia, and I'm a full-time streamer on Twitch, playing lots of World of Warcraft. And lately also a lot of Among Us, by the way, just a side note. But nothing we're going to talk about here though. This is World of Warcraft. Let me introduce my lovely co-host, Perculia.
I'm Perk. I am the site director for Wowhead, so I oversee all the news and guides and tools we put out for retail and classic. With me is Brightpaw, my very rambunctious feral druid who likes to knock things off in the background during the show and always likes to say hi during the intro. But today we have an even more special guest, specializing in endgame PvE content, as well as really insightful commentary. You may have caught her, hosting, commentating some events like Blizzard's MDI. Please give a very warm welcome to Naguura.
Way!
Hey.
Welcome, Naguura.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
So good to have you. Tell us about yourselves. What do you do? What do you enjoy?
Well, I'm also a full-time streamer for a quite long time already. I've been playing WoW since forever. And yeah, I'm known to do high-end content. I definitely want to know more about the lore. I definitely am not an expert yet, but that's why I'm here. It's basically, I'm basically Teddles. We're both Moonkin players. We both don't know much about the lore.
Yep.
But I've been in high-end guilds most of my WoW career, and I'm also really into high M plus as well. That's why I'm also casting the MDI.
Yeah, that's something that I think is really impressive, really cool to see, have you casting things. Because a lot of streamers, what they end up doing is they just keep on streaming, and their stream goes and becomes successful, and, that is that. But then you have the casting things on the side. That's really professional, really impressive. It's awesome to see.
Yeah, it was really difficult for me to start because streaming is actually quite different to casting.
Oh, yeah.
I first thought, oh, this is probably going to be the same thing, but it's not at all. Like, there's all of these cameras and these little studio lights on you, and all of a sudden you feel like you're on the stage. While when I'm streaming, I'm in my home, I'm all comfortable, and you don't see any people around you, so everything is much easier when you're streaming, at least for me, compared to the casting side.
Like when you stream,
I can definitely imagine.
Yeah, like you have a plan and a game, and like you react to your chat, and chat, but then when there's like MDI, it's like, oh, like this surprise thing just happened, and you're on the spot for everything and trying to figure out how to be accessible, but also, be factual at the same time to a much bigger audience that, isn't your, usual crowd.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think also being a caster, you're also more likely to be judged for what you say. Whereas when you're in your own stream, it's your own your own fans, people who like you tend to tune in, at least mostly. Maybe at least 95% of the chat would be nice and, caring and just having fun with you. Whereas when it's casting, it's also people who may not know you. And therefore it becomes, I think, a lot more of a scary situation in a way. At least I would be very nervous doing that. So props to you for doing it. I'm really, really proud of you. You're doing a really great job at it. How long have you been casting?
95% of your chat is nice to you. I mean, I want to have your chat.
Wait, is
Oh no.
Oh no.
My chat's always mean to me.
Wait, really? Oh. Okay, guys, it's time to get the ban hammer out and fix the chat.
Yeah.
No, I'm sure I'm sure it's just nice bullying. It's okay. I'm sure.
They're pretty nice.
Yeah. I can tell. I can see people being here using your emotes.
Yeah.
Nice bullying, kick W. But yeah, how long have you been casting?
I don't even know. I think 3 years by now.
3 years. Okay.
Yeah, the
And in
first
the
time
past
I
year?
started
Mm-hmm.
casting was at Gamescom,
Mm.
and it wasn't even broadcasted to Twitch. It was just a live show on stage. But that was even more nerve-wracking to me because you had all of these people all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Because later on, I only started casting in the studio where it was live broadcasted to a lot more people, but at least there was no audience in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
But when I did the first time on Gamescom, there's like lots of people just looking at me and like
Yeah.
expecting me to do this great
Well,
job.
like
The
if
eye
someone is
contact.
like bored watching a stream, they could just quietly leave or keep it on as the AFK. But if someone is like bored IRL, you're like, oh no, this person is like leaving the room or checking something else, and you're wondering like what their body language is showing. But yeah, that sounds super stressful. I just do website behind the scenes stuff, so I'm just in awe of people that stream or cast full time. That's
Mm-hmm.
just like such a different skill set than I do.
And when you're streaming, it's just a number on the screen, right? Like
Exactly.
they're not
It
real.
doesn't
They're
feel
not
real.
real. I'm not even real. We're just
Yeah.
AI. We're just
Yeah.
talking.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit less intimidating. No, but that's cool. Like you have been a great part of the World of Warcraft community, both with the streaming and the casting, and your skills in the game as well as you said. You've been in many sort of high-end guilds and similar, and even your stream now. I think I mostly catch you doing high-level Mythic plus keys, right?
Yeah, I really enjoy doing high and plus. Unfortunately, lots of people in the high and plus scene only play during good weeks. So
Oh
during bad
yeah.
weeks, I'm stuck finding people all day. So I'm just like AFK in Desert lore most of the time.
Ah, no, yeah,
Or
I,
in
I can
Orgrimmar, even.
imagine that. Like a good affix
Yeah,
week, and then people just start pushing.
yeah, exactly.
But yeah,
So since Naguura is on a more traditional EU schedule, unlike Annie, her time is a bit more limited, so we should probably get into some of the big discussion points
I
like
was
Annie
thinking the
mentioned.
same. Mm-hmm.
The like speculation for the pre-patch and like Ian's surprise developer update and a cinematic and the jailer and a secret. So why don't we start with the Shadowlands pre-patch speculation because in Ian's dev post he talked about updating beta to 9.0.2 so they can continue to work on the beta during the pre-patch, which made it seem like they were kind of behind or still had a lot of hardcore work to do. And a lot of people were assuming that the 22nd would be pre-patch, but normally they give us the 2 week notice with end of season PvP, and we passed that date. So what do we
Yeah.
think is going on?
Do you have any thoughts on that, Nagura?
I thought they're gonna bring the pre-patch at the end of September, but as you said, the 2 weeks notice hasn't been done. But
Mm-hmm.
they also tend to switch up some of the things because they also have the raid released 1 week earlier now, right? They announced
Yeah.
that when it was three
Mm-hmm.
weeks before, now it's 2 weeks. So maybe they're just gonna continue this trend of changing up the dates. So they maybe we only have a 1 week announcement now, so they're gonna tell us soon, or it's gonna be 1 week later, so on the 29th, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Because we also had that other buff which would continue
Yeah.
over the 29th, right? The reputation buff?
Yeah, so I mean it could be minor, but I didn't know if Blizzard would be concerned about things being confusing for a casual player if they pick it up on the 29th and they're getting so much rep if they pick like Legion or BFA and then October 1st like things go away, or maybe all the leveling changes plus the rep buff could lead to like an unexpected interaction or exploit. So I was wondering, would they even want to delay the pre-patch until the ref buff is gone? But then that's pretty short for a pre-patch, so it'd only be 3 weeks.
Yeah. Do we think it's possible at all that the pre-patch would be only 3 weeks? Because I don't think that's ever happened before.
Yeah, so I did some analysis of it, and you have some abnormal ones like Cataclysm, which were 8 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
and Legion, which was two groups of 3 weeks. There was 3 weeks of systems, and then 3 weeks of Demon Hunter and Invasions.
Mm-hmm.
But most of them, for the most part, were just 28 days. So the pre-patches were never super long. So the 29th would actually make sense. That would be the 4 weeks. But the 6th would be, cutting it pretty close.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we are if if it is the 29th, we are nearing the 2 week window. So it could
Mm-hmm.
be announced now on, I guess, tomorrow or the day after. Um, in time for the pre-patch to be on the 29th, so it is still possible. I do still feel like it will be a 2 week notice, especially because of people in the more competitive scenes. I think it's important for them to know. So for example, with PvPers, they want to know when they need to push their ratings in order to get their rank 1 titles, and if they don't get their 2 week notice as usual, and it's shrunk into just 1 week, I think that might be a bit rough on them. Although I don't know how important that is to Blizzard, but I think that's important to notice. And I think also people might be interested to know when it is in good timing in order to complete certain achievements, like the Mythic plus 15 and all the different dungeons. And having 2 weeks means that you get 2 weeks of different affixes, which is a little bit nicer than 1 week of affixes in case it's a week which is maybe slightly harder or less liked by people. Yeah, I don't know. I think my bets are on the 2 week window being announced this week. I think that's my final take on it. What do you guys think?
That makes a lot of sense, to be honest, especially with the PvP. I haven't considered that. It would be really weird if they all of a sudden just change it up, especially if they haven't warned them before. They could have, they probably needed to warn them because for PvP, it's a bigger story than for PvE, right? You still, with the 15 achievement, as you mentioned, with the affixes, it's still a thing, but it's not as big of a deal than for the high-end PvP scene. So definitely would be weird if they change up the 2 week notice. Yeah, I agree.
Hmm.
One thing you were hoping for, Annie, was it seems like we're not going to go through a full corruption vendor rotation. You were kind of hoping that
Yeah.
Blizzard would just put them all
I still
on a
don't know why
vendor,
they
or
haven't
we'd
done
have,
that.
yeah, we'd have that
I
like
don't know
final
either.
push when it was announced, like, okay, it's over. Cloak is max level. All corruptions. Have fun for 2 weeks. So I know you're still hoping for that, but I don't know if that's going to be coming.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm hoping anymore.
Aw.
I feel like it's a little bit too late. It's so little time left now for the new expansion, and the pre-patch corruption is disabled in pre-patch in case people didn't know. So potentially in 2 weeks, corruptions will be completely useless. So not having the possibility to buy whichever corruption you want to because maybe it was last week is really bad. I'm actually very surprised that they didn't just add all of them onto the same vendor at least a month in advance. That was my guess. I thought that we would get access to all of the different corruptions at least 1 month before pre-patch, but now we're practically 2 weeks away and it's still not on the vendor, and I feel like now it's too late anyways. What do you think, Naguura?
So I definitely wanted them to do the same thing, to just have all of the corruptions available.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember back in at the end of Legion, I
Mm-hmm.
really wanted them to remove the legendary cap for like 1 week or something before they remove them,
Mm.
just for fun, just so we can equip all of the legendaries at once, just to
Mm-hmm.
enjoy, which would have been really
That
cool.
would have been really cool.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
one of the devs in an interview was saying that they were considering that like a, free for all week, but it never happened. But yeah, I think that would have been a lot of fun as well, just last hurrah, give them a send off. It doesn't matter if people do crazy things in the last because it's going away. Yeah, I think that would have been a lot of fun. And we've sort of seen in classic how people do really strange things with the tools Blizzard gives them. Like, like there's an AQ war, but then there's a war before the war, and all sorts of unexpected things. So I think you could have gotten some really fun stories of things people would do if they had access to, all corruptions or all Legion legendaries wearing them at once. I think it could be unexpected, surprise things the community does.
Yeah.
Maybe they're worried about people, like if you never had corruption before, or you only started getting your echoes now, and if all of the corruption is available, you get this super strong character, and then 1 week later it's all gone. Maybe they're worried about this like loss of power being too impactful if they just
Yeah.
make everything available at once.
Hmm.
I think that's a good point. I mean, also the experience buff is going away, so that's going to feel bad. And then your heirloom experience bonus is going away. So I know Blizzard keeps talking about how they don't want the start of an expansion to feel like your character is getting weaker. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of worried people are gonna feel weaker, regardless.
Yeah.
So,
I think
is that a
so.
cat in
Yeah,
the background?
definitely. Yeah, it is. My
See,
poor
the cat
baby
is
is
like,
in
I
heat.
want corruption vendor. Give me corruption.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, why don't we highlight the Shadowlands login screen a bit, because this was something that was felt delayed a bit, and obviously you need the login screen for the pre-patch to occur. And we finally got this last week, and we can show off the login screen
Yeah.
and maybe play like a little, maybe like a minute or so of the soundtrack, because it looks pretty epic. And if you just log in with the launcher, you kind of miss the title music, but I think it's really cool.
Yeah. Let me play it here.
Yeah, there's like 10 minutes long. We're just listening to like the initial bit.
Yeah? We're not listening for 10 minutes?
Yeah. No, oh, yeah, we're gonna listen to 10 minutes. We're gonna have
No.
camera on Brightpaw react to it.
Yeah. All right, let's listen. There we go. Yeah. I don't know if Naguura was able to hear that here.
I heard it, yeah. It was
Okay.
It's really good, actually. I like it a lot.
Yeah, it is. It's really nice.
I really like how it starts off quiet for a change, and it sounds like the WoW music you hear when you die, and some of the Arthas chants, and then it goes into
It's
the
like a
main
mixture,
login
isn't
theme.
it? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like more unusual than other ones, which are more like epic, loud noises at the very start. I like how it builds up. And I feel like the main theme is arranged to sound more heroic than in BFA, which I guess is fitting. I'm a music major, so I love analyzing it. But it, like with BFA, it was like not totally satisfying, and maybe that was meant to give off like a morally gray vibe. But I like how this has a very high fantasy feel to it. And if you keep listening to the full theme, uh, it's like all the covenants have little cameos in it as well. Like each covenant has 1 or 2 minutes. It sounds like a Revendreth waltz, and then like naturey stuff, and like Valdraxxus military. So I think it's a really cool theme song.
Well, now I feel like
So
I
yeah,
need to
where
listen
does
to
this
the whole
login
thing.
screen? Where does the login screen rate compared to other login screens? Because this is the second time we are now seeing Icecrown Citadel as a login screen.
Indeed. We saw Icecrown Citadel back in Wrath of the Lich King, and now it is a comeback with the added details of the Shadowlands in the sky. So it's
and no Syndragosa screaming at you.
Yeah, no Syndragosa. No Syndragosa either, no. I think it's beautiful. Like Shadowlands in the sky, the whole scenery together like that, I think it looks amazing.
Yeah, me too. I agree. And it's a really cool idea to just have it all, like have the Shadowlands in the sky. I think it's great.
It's like really symbolic how like, you're gonna be logging in right at the top of the stairs. So, you're almost like literally going into the Shadowlands as you are logging in. And I think it's
Yeah.
cool they kept it on Azeroth as opposed to, you know, showing something in Shadowlands that maybe wouldn't be as, I don't know, like iconic in an expansion or so.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it looks really cool, and the color combination is striking as well, with the dark blue and
Mm-hmm.
orange.
And the point of view itself, it's like you're kind of below and you're looking upwards, which makes it look very powerful. And yeah, I think it goes really well together. And I also agree that it's nicer having Icecrown Citadel come back again as a comeback rather than having a completely new thing from the Shadowlands itself. Although I could imagine some really beautiful sceneries in the Shadowlands too, but maybe then it's difficult to decide which one of the four main themes you want to pick, and maybe having a mixture of all four became a little bit difficult to grasp one feeling since they all kind of give off different vibes. So maybe this is why it was decided to have this sort of entrance to the Shadowlands as the main piece of art. I could imagine that being a little bit more difficult to pull off than having this sort of very iconic view instead.
Yeah, I mean they've used it in the cinematic and then, in all their announcement materials, like even the free mount, which by the way is still going on, Vote Cat.
Oh yeah,
Even for that,
no
because they
vote
didn't have any art
vote
yet,
book.
they still used like the sky as the image to announce that news.
Naguura, what did you vote?
I didn't actually vote yet.
Okay, okay. Which
So
one
you can
would you
still
want to
convince
vote?
me.
Oh, you haven't
um,
picked one, or?
no, I'm thinking between the tree and
Mm-hmm.
the book right now.
All right, so we have another team book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're a druid, so it makes sense why you want the tree.
The
Yeah,
cat
I
would
think it
also
makes
make
sense.
sense,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
I figured we had so many like cat-like mounts already. We need the
Yeah.
tigers and all the night elf mounts that I figured. Even though I do love cats,
Oh no,
I
he heard the word cat.
could
He's
do some
coming
more.
back.
Are we talking about cats here? I need to be
Yeah.
here too.
He woke up from his nap.
Oh, so
Um,
sweet.
but speaking of druidic things, we had Afterlives Ardenweald premiere a few days ago.
Ooh. Mm-hmm.
And we are not going to do a lore deep dive because we already have that on Wowhead. And Naguura is like Tettles with lore, but it was still an interesting cinematic. So I think it's just worth discussing cool things about it. It's pretty long, so we're not going to play it on the stream. But what did you guys think? Like we had a really big discussion last week that Maldraxxus introduced like a brand new character, and maybe it could have done a better job if it had more time to focus on her. And I think that this cinematic did a really good job of taking characters we didn't really know and making you feel a lot for them, and it was super emotional. So I thought this one was really well done. What did you
Yeah.
guys think?
Um, I Nagur, do you have any like I know maybe the lore part of things may not be the most focus of anything, but did you watch the cinematic, and did you feel anything at all that you want to share? And if you don't, that's okay. You can also say that.
Cried or look.
No, I watched it, and before I watched it, I already had lots of people come and say, "Don't watch it. It's too sad. Don't do it."
Uh huh.
And then when I ended up watching it anyway, uh, I did not understand the whole part of the lore, but I didn't understand how the soul of Ursak he had to get sacrificed basically, and we
Mhm.
saw um, the tree lady,
Mhm.
the queen.
The Winter Queen.
The queen was being like super sad, having to ask that uh, of the tree boy.
Yep, the tree boy. Mhm.
Yep.
So we have the tree lady and the tree boy, and then the tree bear.
And yeah, it was really
Yes.
sad.
Yeah, no, it was a very powerful cinematic put together. It starts off with a character that most people have probably encountered. If you guys remember in Emerald Nightmare with Ursak, I personally didn't know everything about the lore myself. So I actually read the very long and detailed and very well written article, which was covering the Afterlives Ardenweald with not just talking about what happened in the cinematic, but also a lot of background things. Since I am also lacking a lot of the lore backgrounds, so that helped a lot. So thank you, whoever wrote that. Was it you, Perk?
Yeah, that was me.
Okay. Yeah, because
I
you
was
gave a
like,
background
oh,
to
I need to.
everything. Yeah,
Thank you.
because I remember Ursoc from the raid when we fought it, but I don't really know exactly what's happened around Ursoc, so it was nice to sort of freshen up the memories and also learn all the new things around it. So that was nice. And then yeah, we were introduced to a new character. I think he was called Aranol or something like that.
Fun.
The tree boy.
Aralon? Yes, the
Yes.
tree boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tree
The
boy
tree
and the
boy
wizard
has a
boy.
name and it's Aralon.
Okay. All
Yes.
right.
I forgot myself, so there it is. It was his face, which was on the cover of the Afterlives Ardenweald cinematic, and we were not sure who it is, and now we know from watching the cinematic. And yeah, we sort of follow him as he realizes that there is problems going on in Ardenweald, and I think the cinematic did a pretty good job at showing us him where he is, more at peace, and then later on how he has to face more difficult decisions and more, yeah, more like negative things, I guess, which becomes it gives a perspective of the character, and seeing that sort of arc in that short video I think was really good.
Gur's perspective is interesting because, I might be someone that is writing these articles, like piecing the background and everything together, but a lot of people, don't play World of Warcraft every week. They are not full-time streamers, they have other jobs, they may have even taken a break, canceled their subscription with BFA, and it's cool that Afterlives can work on a very deep dive lore level, but it also needs to be successful at appealing to people that are like, oh, this looks really pretty, and it made me feel something.
Oh, the
Which,
cinematic was beautiful,
yeah,
absolutely
like,
Definitely.
beautiful.
oh, I want Ursoc as a plushie. I'm so sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so happy. So yeah, I think it's good that you don't need to understand the lore, but it still elicits an emotion. And
Oh
as
yeah.
for the tree boy, I didn't recognize him at first until I saw the subtitles, and I'm like, oh, that's the character that, goes on to do stuff in the Ardenweald
Yeah, because
quest.
he's in the
So
quest lines, yeah.
yeah. And then once you realize that, you're like, oh, that's really cool to see how he went from being this like character so focused on his grove to, being more of a leader and like, doing bigger things during the actual quest line. So I think it's important that it works on several layers. And I also thought it was cool how Ursoc looks exactly the same as in the Emerald Nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was like neat continuity, seeing how like something from Legion is now paying off in Shadowlands.
Yeah, it's like as if the cinematic is right after that occurrence, right?
Yeah, like his final line is his death line in the raid. So
Yeah.
it's like a direct continuation, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, that is really cool.
Um, but yeah, I was just curious to hear Nagura's reaction because it's like, oh, Druid Pride, like there goes the Guardian Druid in
Yeah.
Shadowlands, and now the
Yeah.
forest is all sad.
When I quested through, because again, I'm not really a lore person, so when I
Right.
quest through areas, I'm not like reading all the quest tags and
Yeah.
not trying to keep up.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
when I was questing through Ardenweald, I was trying to keep up a little bit because I'm a
Mm.
druid, and when I understood the story of the trees, I was so sad. It's like, oh no, the trees.
Yeah.
Yeah, what did you think of the cinematic when there was like the glimpse of the future and the tree was falling? I'm like, oh no, like it's another big
Yeah.
tree, it's another Teldrassil. Why does Blizzard keep doing this to trees?
Yeah, what's going on with the trees? They hate druids.
Oh no. Maybe that's why we need the tree mount
Yeah.
to make up
Yeah.
for it. Yeah. It's really nice
Another
though
thing.
when even for someone who may not be super into lore, how it becomes interesting to take part of some of it when you feel like it's when it relates to you in a way, because you mentioned you were a druid,
Yeah.
so it feels nice to read the story around it. And I think that's something that Blizzard is doing really well actually with these different zones, because they're all very specific to certain stories. So I can imagine a lot of people feeling like, oh, I really like this zone because it speaks to me for, this and this reason. And it's sort of the same with you being a druid, feeling like you're interested in Ardenweald and Night Fae.
Yeah, I agree. And it also had the the opposite thing happened to me with Bastion and the Kyrians, because when I first saw Bastion, I was like, oh my god, this is the most beautiful zone. I want to be a Kyrian. And I
Yeah.
also saw how they looked like with the wings, and I was like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my god, this is great.
Mm-hmm.
But when I quested through the area, I just didn't really like this whole vibe that it gave me, how the Kyrians are. I just didn't like it. And I was
Yeah.
like, maybe I don't want to be a Kyrian after all.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. That means that you're taking part of things, and hopefully you won't be disappointed with having to pick one due to player power. But
That's so.
otherwise, it's great
Which we will
because then
get
you
to
know where
very
you
soon.
belong.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. That's
One more
awesome.
thing that I think this did really well is that it made you feel really bad for Ardenweald, and then it made you feel upset with the jailer. And in BFA, it was so much like, well, this person did the wrong thing, but like maybe secretly it was the right thing, or it happened to a bad person, so maybe it's morally gray. And I like how in Shadowlands they're trying to say, the jailer is meant to be this villain, and then to sort of quash more speculation, it's like, look, he did this horrible thing to the forest, the tree is falling, and this
Yeah.
cute bear died.
Yeah.
So I like how they're making it
It's
very
more direct.
clear
Mm-hmm.
what is going on, and reinforcing the jail. They're not like, oh, but maybe he's like a good guy. I like how they're sticking to their fantasy and not trying to like bait us or confuse us for controversy.
Mm-hmm. Morally gray Sylvanas burns the tree.
Mm.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I really like this one. Since we mentioned Bastion, what did you think of Maldraxxus Naguura? Just as someone, not like a lore deep dive, but like personally, I liked Ardenweald better because I didn't know either character super well, but I could like I had time to like I had time to like, I don't know, immerse myself in Ardenweald. But Maldraxxus to me felt too like short to get to know her as much. But it looked really cool. So just curious what you thought of that one if you watched it.
I think the Maldraxxus one was like the one that I didn't feel like basically anything about. I did see it. I was like, yeah, it's kind of cool, but I didn't really understand what's going on. I didn't understand the characters, and I didn't understand that they have these different kind of
Houses?
Houses.
artists or
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
houses in
Yeah.
Maldraxxus. And it's just because also when I leveled through my Maldraxxus and beta, I also felt really disconnected to the story, and it wasn't interesting to me at all. So I didn't pay as much attention as I did with Ardenweald and Bastion, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So when I saw the cinematic, I was like, the other two ones are a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Maldraxxus is hard. Like if you like spikes or like the orc aesthetic, you would probably like Maldraxxus or Undead.
Yeah.
But I did an art interview, and the art director was saying that it was a challenge to develop because the zone doesn't have any trees. And it's like, wow, this zone is so alien. Like, how does it not have a tree?
Yeah.
So I think it's hard to feel at home in a zone that's like, very slimy and rocks and bones and no wildlife at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
It reminds me of the bad areas in Lion King. You know, when Simba wanted to go there
Oh
and then he's
yeah.
not
Yeah.
allowed.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's like, don't go to Maldraxxus, guys. It's dangerous. Yeah,
But yeah.
I think those are the main comments and interesting things to talk about the Afterlives, unless you want to go into a deep lore dive, which I do recommend. I read everything myself.
I could read it too,
And
apparently.
it was good information for anyone who don't know the exact story behind Ursoc and the Emerald Dream and Emerald Nightmare and all that stuff. So definitely a recommended read for those who are somewhat lore interested or very lore interested. Then of course, actually, if you're very lore interested, maybe you know everything already. But yeah, the next
Yeah, check
interesting
out the
topic here.
article.
Yeah.
And we're yep. Just check out the article. It's linked in the show notes on Wowhead's front page.
Mm-hmm.
And we are really shifting gears now to talk about Ian and
Yeah.
Covenant.
Yes. So
So
Ian made a very large post covering many interesting topics that have been very popular as of late. And yeah, should we start with the Covenant discussion?
yeah, so he talked about many things, but obviously most people were here for the bit about covenants, which was basically TLDR. There is no cord being pulled, and all the covenant systems are intertwined, which has led to a big discussion about was pull the ripcord ever a thing? Blizzard is doubling down on this. So Naguura, as the endgame PvE expert, what did you make of Ian's commentary on the Covenant decision and his explanation?
Um, so I understood his explanation, the way he pointed it out, but the one thing that just bothers me a little bit, and I think that's also the thing that bothers the high end players the most, is that he said there's a possibility for them to pull the ripcord and scrap the whole covenant or not switchable idea. But it really seems like there never really was this often. Maybe there was, but like a very, very tiny chance, because it really seemed like it's such a core idea of the whole expansion, that it's almost impossible for them, at least during beta, to just kind of rewrite the whole idea, right? So when I read it, I definitely, but to be honest, I didn't really have hope in the first place. I thought they're never going to do this anyway. So when I read it, I was not disappointed because I knew this beforehand. But lots of people were disappointed because they said, okay, so he just lied to us, basically. And I do understand them when they have these kind of sentiments towards it, because it really seems like, oh, we didn't want to do this all along, but we just like let you sit there and hope for a little while.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw this magazine cover, which we'll talk about later in the notes, but there was like an interior spread, and there was one page that was basically like, nothing comes close to picking for character development as picking your class and race in WoW, and we're going to change all that in Shadowlands by making your covenant matter just as much. Choices have consequences. And
Yep.
it's like, well, if this is the big takeaway message from Shadowlands was there really hope about pulling the ripcord if this is being used as a big advertising hook that people should care about this as much as their race and class.
Mm-hmm. I think
Um,
Blizzard probably just feels like the impression it kind of gives is that they have worked so hard on this that they don't want it to be um, irrelevant to things, because then all the work that they put in wouldn't matter. If things are purely cosmetic and visual, then people simply won't care. So I think this is their attempt at making this feel like a big pillar of the expansion. And I'm still not sure it's gonna work out. I think it's still I think it's a really cool system. It seems fun, and it's really cool that they all have different vibes and different stories to them. He did mention that you should be able to swap between them. I think there might be like a little bit of a not a huge punishment basically for doing so, but you will be able to. But it just feels wrong. Like, for example, hearing Naguura talk about how she likes Ardenweald and Night Fae, and then she may potentially have to change sometimes to something else because of player power, then it feels like her choice wasn't really her choice. Her choice was the power choice. And it makes it feel like it's got a sort of disconnect to it. And I'm not really sure how they're going to fix that.
I'm also concerned about systems that only last for one expansion, like we saw that in Legion with the artifacts, and now BFA with the essences.
Mm-hmm.
And as we go into Shadowlands, they're hyping up, oh, your covenant matters as much as your class and race, but the class and race you take forward into the next expansion, it's like, well, what's going to happen with Shadowlands when that expansion is over? Do you have to build something as elaborate as covenants and soulbinds? And it just seems like it's a lot of dev work for something that takes a while to balance and is only usable for a few years, and then when it goes away, you again feel bad when you lose all of these abilities and other perks. Like we were
Mm-hmm.
just talking about that with corruption, how you're gonna lose things in the pre-patch, and then you're going to feel bad. And it seems that Blizzard is like really down to the wire at developing if they made this special 9.0.2 realm to continue once the PTR is out. So you just have to wonder um, sort of like the sustainability of building these like very elaborate systems with choices that only last for a pretty small period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's actually very interesting because I've never thought about it that way. That like, what are they gonna do after Shadowlands, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And if the whole system is successful the way they want it, and people really identify as I'm a Venthyr paladin and I'm a Night Fae druid, if it goes away, all of a sudden that probably feels really bad, as you said. So I
Mm-hmm.
definitely think if it's successful, they're gonna have that problem, and if it's not successful, then they're gonna have a whole other lot of problems, right?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's a very good point. Definitely.
I also think that this post sort of buried in the middle, it we learned that you had to do 2 weekly quests to return to a covenant that you left. Um but I feel like people are very concerned about this, and that almost could have been its own blue post, or like very explicitly like these are the quests you do, like one is after the other, because I don't really think you can test it super well on beta, and like the beginning part of it just was added maybe this week or the week before. So I know a lot of people are anxious about that, and maybe if they could see what exactly they had to do to swap, it wouldn't make them feel like happier, but it would make them feel less anxious, because, right now that's kind of a big unknown thing, what you have to do to swap back.
I think that's been the core of the panic that a lot of people have had for the longest time. So it's kind of surprising that it's still not possible to try this out properly to kind of close the idea of panic, to just shut that down so people can instead just focus on, okay, so it's possible to do this. How do we do this? How smooth is it? How bad is it? It is a little bit surprising that it's still not happened, since that was one of the very, very first feedbacks that I remember from the Covenant system. Like, are they going to be swappable? And how? Like, will we be punished if we swap? And
Yeah, like that came
questions
up in
like
so
that.
many interviews, and it was always like, oh, we're still working on it. And I feel like, we're getting pretty close to the expansion, so it would be good to have an official statement, or see it fully for ourselves.
Yep.
Um,
Ian also mentioned
yeah.
sockets.
Yeah. I feel like this was better news. Removing RNG, because you could buy a socket from Venari similar to the one from Horrific Visions, and sockets can now only appear on certain item slots, not all of them. So I feel like this seems more positive than what people were expecting.
Yeah,
I don't think people were expecting the vendor socket, so that seems good.
yeah, I think that's really good because it's something that people have been asking for a long time, and they sort of tried it now during the last patch of this expansion when corruptions came in. Then we were able to buy a socket for the doing horrific visions, and I think the feedback from that was really positive. It might be quite expensive, might take a bit of time, but eventually most people were able to socket everything, and I think that's good because if you're not lucky, you should be able to grind to get to the same point as somebody who is lucky.
And it should be easier than 8.3 if only helms, rings, neck bracers, and belts can be socketed
Mm-hmm.
versus having to worry about RNG for every single slot.
Mm-hmm. So I think that was
Yeah,
the, yeah. Go ahead.
sorry. I think it's a good idea that they reduce the amount of items that you can socket and that they put the vendor in from the get-go. I
Mm-hmm.
definitely like that idea. The one thing I always disliked about the socket system as a whole is that like the fact that it devalues the worth of item level. So because if you
Mm.
have an item
Mm,
without a socket and one with a socket, it has the same item level, but one is stronger than the other. And I never really liked that. Same with corruption.
Yeah.
But I get the idea that you need to have the sockets in the game, otherwise the whole profession of drill crafting is just not really going to be a profession anymore. So I do understand
right.
that they have to do something about it.
Yeah. I think, well, I think professions have been quite bad for people in general. Even now that we've had sockets, gems have been so cheap that I think jewel crafters have like barely made any profit. But it's a good point, because that's also one of the very main arguments that a lot of people had with corruptions too. There should not be things that make lower item level items be a clear upgrade to something which is a higher item level, especially when the item level gap is bigger, which
I'm
is
also thinking of the whole Rex Troy experiments he's been doing, showing how gear with sockets can make you worse in PvP in some
Oh
situations
yeah.
due to PvP scaling,
Mm-hmm.
and that whole can of worms.
Yeah. I think something that could potentially fix that issue if you have a socketed item which is a bit lower item level and something else is higher level, maybe have a I don't know, maybe a solution of being able to remove a socket from one item, put in on another one. Maybe that would be too overpowered. I don't know. Or maybe upgrades. Just like in PvP, you've got trophies to upgrade your PvP items. Maybe an item level upgrade system so you can upgrade those items that you have that are gemmed so that they can be a bit higher up. I don't know. Oh, what do you think, Nagur? Do you have any thoughts on how that can be improved?
Yeah, I think it's really difficult. I
Mm-hmm.
definitely like, as I said, that they're limiting this at least the slots
Yeah,
where
that's really
the
good.
gems are gonna be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't really have a solution for it either. They did reduce the value of secondary sets at a certain point. So if you reach a lot more mastery than all of the other sets, at some point it will have a diminishing return, right? Which I guess devalues sockets a little bit because at some point you're gonna have to pick a different stat, but that
Mm-hmm.
will only happen way later in the expansion, I guess, not at the start.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's difficult. And I also feel like it's a downside for playing off specs as well, and we already have so many other downsides for off specs in Shadowlands with conduits and covenants and legendaries. And I feel like gems is also such a thing. In BFA, for example, I have sockets for all of my Restoder gear, but my Moonking gear does not have all sockets because
Mm.
I have to farm like everything double. And if I play three specs, I have to farm everything
Oh.
triple. And it just becomes this chore that feels really bad if you want to play multiple specs at some point, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in that case, especially for that kind of situation, it's really good that the number of sockets is reduced. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
with today's system, we do have three pieces that are azurites, so those can't be socketed. And then you also have the neck and you have the legendary cloak. That leaves. So that means 5 slots can't be gemmed. How many was it that's gonna be able to be gemmed in the future?
Just 5. Oh wait, no. One helm, two. 6 slots. Helm, neck, bracer, belt, and then 2 rings.
Okay. Is that slightly less or is it the same?
I
Considering
think
we
it's
had five
less.
slots that couldn't be gemmed before.
God, math. So,
I can't count.
well, you could gem like your 2 weapons, right? So you have
True.
like
True.
bracer, 2 weapons, uh, gloves, belt, pants, boots, and
Okay,
two
so it's
rings.
definitely less than. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 9 down to 5.
Yeah. Well, that's a good improvement. That leaves a little bit less stress for alt specs and alts in general too. That's another thing too. If you play an alt and you compare the gear, your main has slots in everything or gems in everything, and then you log your alt and it has like 0, maybe 1 if it's been lucky.
Yeah.
So I think that makes it alt friendly too, which is good.
Actually brings up another discussion point from the Ian blog, which was he was introducing a new alt leveling system that seems to actually be pretty well received, and it has a lot of similarity to Diablo 3's adventure mode, where you choose the Covenant at level 50, and then you can level up just by doing like world quest and dungeons and bonus zone objectives instead of the storyline. So
Yeah.
this is great for your alt because you can start working on the covenants and the world quests and maybe more like gearing your character up for raid, those objectives, as opposed to doing a bunch of story things before picking the covenant. So
Mm-hmm.
this to me, this was a pretty good win, and people are like, hey, like it would be cool if more of the game could have this applied to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a really nice improved system. It's the first time that it's been done like this, I think. So that's
Oh yeah.
really cool to see how that's gonna work out. Did you read about that, Nagura? The new leveling thing?
Yeah, I did read about it, and I thought it's a really cool idea
Mm-hmm.
because especially for people who really like having multiple characters on max level, at some point it just
Oh yeah.
feels really boring to go through the same quest chain every single time. So having different options and also being able to work towards this like end character goal already is
Exactly.
really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely like this idea.
Mm-hmm.
Only thing I was not worried about, but I guess you want to choose a covenant already before you start leveling, and then you don't get to experience the
Mm-hmm.
other abilities, I guess. But you could choose to do it differently, right? If that's your goal. So
Yeah.
that's not an issue.
Yeah, that's the thing. You're given the option, which makes it nice. So
Yeah.
maybe if you want to, you do play three alts to play the other covenants, and then after you've got four characters maxed, then you can decide to do it the world quest route. Because I think it's really cool. It's sort of like you're not max level, but you're allowed to do the max level content. You know, like world
Yeah.
quests and things like that. So you're working towards things that you would do at 60, and you can do it already at 50. So it feels a lot more fluid in that sense, I think. But like you said, if you want to experience a different covenant, you may not want to skip the story until you've played enough characters to go through all of them.
If you're rolling a character maybe just to help out with raid, or you're, good with keys on
Yeah.
one character, and like you're rolling a different DPS to see if that character can get up. Maybe you don't need all the fussy story stuff, and you just want to, start working on your world quest, just the covenant you want to be, like
Yeah.
what meta combination you want, and you just want to focus. Now you can do that now.
Yeah. Or if you're playing the same class but multiple times, maybe you're playing both factions, maybe you're playing the same faction
Mm-hmm.
many times. How many boomkins do you have at max level? Or how many druids do you have at max level, Naguura?
I actually leveled 4 druids in Legion,
Okay.
Wow.
max level, because of the legendary situation. I figured
Yeah.
one of them has to get a good legendary, so
One
I'm
of
just
them
gonna
is
play
going to be
that one.
Right.
lucky.
Yeah. But in BFA, I only have one, and I really hope that I don't need to level 2 for Shadowlands, because I really like playing off specs. And as I said, there's a lot of issues with off specs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm only gonna level 1 at the start, but if there's gonna be huge issues that I can't build the legendary that I need for Mythic Plus,
Mm-hmm.
or I can't switch the conduits the way I want, then I'm probably gonna level a second one.
Okay. You don't play both factions? You play just one faction?
No, I only play Horde. I used to play a little bit of Alliance in the past, and I actually would prefer to be Alliance, because I just
Because
like the
it's the
whole
better
Alliance
side?
side more. Yeah, it's just prettier
Lines
and
here.
everything
Yeah.
looks good. But all of the guilds I've been in, they were all Horde, and all the M plus players are also Horde,
Yeah.
so kind of forced to be Horde.
Yeah, no, it's true. All competitive players seem to be moving to Horde, and even the not very hardcore guilds of my server. I'm on Ravencrest EU. At least five, I think, different guilds have now moved to Horde, different servers, because of getting ready for recruiting for Shadowlands. So
Yeah.
it's something that we see across all servers and like the whole game in general. Apparently, it was 7 of the top 10 guilds of my server that all left to go to Horde. Not the same server. Some
Wow.
people went, I don't know, Twisting Nether, Kazakh, and maybe some other places too. So that's what it is. If you want to be competitive, you gotta be on the Horde side.
But the funny thing is that it's not even because of the racials, right? Because in
No,
the
it's the
past,
people, right?
yeah, exactly.
It's
Because
just too much momentum that it's just
yeah,
easier to find people now.
Yeah,
yeah,
like, yeah, like they're all already there. So like the guilds, they didn't go because of slightly better racials or anything. They left because they know that recruitment will be easy over there. I think
yeah. And
like
the
most
alliance rituals are even better for M plus, because you have the shadow
Yeah.
mail,
oh yeah,
which
Shadow Meld is so
makes
huge.
you, yeah, just
Mm-hmm.
makes you drop combat. So some of the M plus teams even faction changed to alliance just to be able to have the better racial for a couple of weeks, and then they came back afterwards to raid.
Oh,
So it's
Yeah.
yeah.
interesting
Took
that
it through gear.
everyone wants to be horde after all.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
another
that's
thing
interesting.
the Ian
Mm-hmm.
post talked about was tuning passes, and I think that is tied to why they are splitting up 9.0.1 and 9.0.2, where 9.0.1 is more the stuff that we're going to get when the pre-patch goes live, like the customization and level changes, but they can keep working on the point 2 branch to keep doing class tuning and covenant tuning. Like they gave the example of the Necrolord Rogue is probably going to get looked at. And it seems they're doing this special Shadowlands realm so they can keep, I guess, tuning at a really, frequent pace and keep getting testing.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of the tuning situation so far? I know we got like the tank tuning last week, a lot more class changes in recent weeks than before. How do you think it's shaping up on Blizzard's end in the balancing act between the covenants at this point?
Um, well, I think at least I can only talk about the DPS point of view because
Right.
I don't really know about tanks. And for healers, I think we've seen some tuning for healers, but we still don't know because a lot of the power for healers comes from raids, and I haven't been doing a lot of raid testing
Mm.
myself. I've only been doing in
Mm.
plus. But yeah, for the damage dealers, it really there's just so many issues still. Not
Mm.
only issues, but also lots of straight out bugs or things being really, really overpowered. And the conduits are backed on Shadowlands as well right now in beta, that they just randomly get disabled, so they don't work at all, which is a huge portion of your damage as
Oh.
well. It affects your damage. So
Mm-hmm.
not having
Like, does
conduits
anyone
and
know how the conduit ranks work? Like, like we data mined like the 15 ranks and they talked about upgrading them, and it's like, well, are we gonna get to try that out? Like,
yeah, I don't even
no
yeah, I
idea.
actually don't know how that works exactly. And also always wondered because switching conduits is going to have a cooldown of 1 week, right? But I
Mhm.
always wondered how they're going to deal with it if, let's say, I get a conduit at the start and I can slot it into my soulbind, and then a day later I get a better one. If I put that in, like, is it going to be a 1 week CD then, even though it's the
Yeah.
same rank, or how does it work? Like, it's really confusing to me, to be honest.
Yeah, I really don't like a cooldown on that. I think you should be able to change it whenever you want, just like gems. I feel like
Yeah.
even having the conduits destroyed is better, to be honest, than having a weak cooldown because it feels so punishing, like you said, especially in the first few days, right? Later on, as you've already put most conduits in, I think once a week might make sense. But at the beginning, when you're still discovering different conduits and you want to try them and you want to play them, you want to slot them because you have it. You don't want to be like, oh no, I can't put this in even though it's empty because if I want to change it later, it will cause a cooldown and I don't know when I'm going to find it. And I think that makes it very annoying and punishing when you play.
Yeah, definitely. And also, again, this whole issue with the off specs that I've been talking about
Oh, yeah.
is also going to be an issue. If I want to play healer in Mythic Plus, but I want to play Moonkin in the raid, then I either have to go a different soulbind, which is fine. But if I'm a pure DPS spec, like a mage, who always wants to go with the same soulbind because it's very damage friendly compared to the other soulbinds who are more of like utility,
Mm-hmm.
then you have an issue if you want to play Fire Mage in M Plus and Frost Mage in the raid or whatever.
Yep.
Then you just have to play with the suboptimal conduits, which just also feels bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand their sentiment that they don't want people to constantly go back and switch covenants between arena games or between bosses. Because I totally understand that, and I also wouldn't want to do that as a raider. I would feel like it would just be annoying to constantly go and change it.
Yeah.
But
Like
I feel
before
like they
each
could have a
boss.
better solution. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I
Right.
think
I
they
think
would be
that
a better
changing
solution
soul
than what
binds
we
before
called out.
each boss would be fine. Not the week-long cooldown.
Yeah.
I'm also concerned that if like there are so many different systems to tune and balance. Um, what happens if the raid or Mythic Plus goes live and there's this unforeseen OP interaction? So people, want to farm a certain like conduit or legendary or pick a covenant, and then it's, oh, now this got really nerfed, and people are like, oh well, now I am, stuck with this conduit, which isn't good for a week, or oh, I wouldn't have picked this covenant if um, I knew that this tuning would have occurred sooner. So I'm also concerned how they're going to handle the start of the competitive season, especially because there's less of a gap, like we said before, between launch and the raid season starting.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to be a super big issue. It's definitely easier to switch your covenant if it's not your second time to go to that covenant, right? So it's not you don't need the 2 weeks if you're gonna switch from
No,
Vestir to Night Fae. It's gonna be slightly
right.
easier, but I'm not sure how much you still lose, and it's still gonna be annoying. And conduits as well? Are they going to be gone? Do you have them in your old covenant now? Do you need to reform them? Like, what's going to happen? I just really think there's going to be lots of issues at the start, especially because right now there's still so many issues in beta. They did say they are trying their best to tune everything, and I did have hope for a while. But if they're gonna be tuning everything once Shadowland is already live, then I just really feel like
Yeah.
it's gonna cause all of these issues for players, and it's just gonna be so. It's going to be an inconvenience for people, and people are already going to be super upset if they have to switch their covenant after 2 weeks.
Yep.
I also think that we saw with corruption how some were super OP, and even though this was up for testing on the PTR, not everyone, test the PTR for fun, especially people that aren't in the games industry, because hey, it's for free. Why would you randomly play a buggy game for no money? And when they would tune things, people would say, "Oh, I shouldn't have passed on that weapon because now this weapon is OP," or
Oh yeah.
"Oh, I just,
That happens too.
vendored or disenchanted something and now it's really good." And I feel like you're going to have more of that on a wider scale if there's even more variables. It's going to be 10 times the sadness of a corruption item you got rid of suddenly being good or bad. It's oh well, my covenant and my soulbind and my conduit and my legendary are all I picked them for different reasons and now they've changed.
Yeah, this is why it's so important for tuning to happen early. Like now, as much as possible, has to be tuned and fixed during beta, maybe during the pre-patch on the beta, but before Shadowlands is out. Because if it's done when Shadowlands is out, there's still gonna be probably many things that still has to be tuned, and many times Blizzard decides not to tune something because of that feeling of disappointment that people feel. So they know, for example, towards the end of the expansion now with corruption, certain corruptions are way too overpowered, but they kind of just let it be because, well, it's soon over anyways, so it doesn't matter. And we can't have that at the beginning of an expansion. It's so important that it has to be done before, especially since they are locking us behind certain decisions that we're making. Then it's really important it's done early.
Streaming culture too. Can you imagine if someone is pulling up a stream and they're like, "Oh, let me react to the hot fixes on my stream," and then it's like, "Oh no, item I got is now horrible." And that goes viral. It just people, Blizzard needs to think about the advertising and player reactions and YouTube videos and that whole network of content that can surround dramatic hot fixes or class balance.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And we also know that people go into streamers' chat and ask, "Ooh, what covenant should I play as a Shadow
Oh, yeah.
Priest?"
Yeah.
And if that streamer is going to tell you after a week, "Oh, now you should be Venthyr, not Nightfey anymore," then those people will also feel inclined that they have to switch, even if it's not a super big deal. But if that person says it's better, then they also feel like they have to do it, right?
That's a really really interesting topic that you touched there. We've discussed in the past. We don't need to deep dive into it, but a lot of people think, oh, it only matters because of to the high end players. Everyone else, it doesn't matter. No one's gonna care. But people do care. Like you said, even a casual player will tune into a stream and ask, hey, what's best for Shadow Priest? And then you tell them X is best for Shadow Priest. Then they will do it. They're not gonna be like, oh, it is? Okay, well, I like this other one better. They're gonna try to pick the best, even if it's only a 1% difference, even if they're not even skilled enough for that difference to make a difference. They will still pick the one that's better because they've been told it's better. So that's why a lot of those decisions, it cripples down to the casuals too, just because they have to pick what other people picked.
I think that's just how the information meta is across games in 2020. Vanilla and classic, lots of similarities, almost the same game. But people like figuring things out and going slow in vanilla, and now everyone just wants to know what is my best in slot.
Yeah.
Or you Google what are popular terms for games that comes out, and it's even things like Animal Crossing, it's what is the best villager, villager tier list.
And they literally don't even matter.
Yeah, it's just what is the best? I don't have time. Tell me what is the best. And people just, that's how
Yep.
people want to consume information now.
Yeah, and I remember thinking like, wait, this tier list for Animal Crossing, like, why? Like, how do they make a difference? It's like, well, you know, they have different personalities. I'm like, okay, and how does that make a difference? Well, you know, they talk to you different. Some of them will be grumpy, some of them will be happy, and I'm like,
Oh.
there's actually a tier list based on, it's like personalities, their houses, how it looks, you know, visual, and then
Yeah.
also how they look themselves. Some look cuter than others, and there's literally a tier list, like, you know, the S tier list and then the A tier list of the
Oh,
best
no.
villagers to pick in Animal Crossing, and everyone will go and try to get the best ones because, you know, someone decided this is what's best.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, you know, even if you are casual, like if you're just reading hot fixes, suppose you don't even like follow streamers, if you see something like, oh, the effectiveness of this has been, you know, halved, you might be like, is this still good for me? Like, you know, you don't want to get something and then suddenly feel like it's not good, or you passed on something. Like, you know, at the start of the expansion, maybe you're like, oh, you know, I took off a week from work. I'm gonna get as much as possible done. When I have to go back to work, I'll at least have, you know, my first epics or my first conduits. Like, you want to know what to go for. You're not going to, you know, a regular person with kids is not going to just play WoW 24/7. They're gonna be like, I've got 2 hours to farm, you know, one or two conduits. Tell me what to do. And they don't want that to be changing on them all the time. They want to feel good about the work they've done.
Yeah, and they want to feel efficient. Like, I spent good time to farm the best thing, and that's what's important.
I
There's
actually thought because there's so many systems in BFA, it's really complicated, right? And
Oh,
as
yeah.
you mentioned,
Yeah.
someone who doesn't play a lot, um, they might get super confused. So they just go into a stream and ask them, or they look into a Discord channel and figure out how to get this information quickly on what to choose. And I had this idea that maybe they try to, like, Blizzard tries to make it as complicated as possible with covenants and conduits, that at some point it's so complicated that there's no best answer anymore. So people might stop asking just because it's too complicated anyway.
that's
I mean,
the
but
final
like
goal. Like,
we've
oh
seen with
no.
classic, like it's so people just, you could take a game that was played one way and people will just want to play it how other games are played in 2020. And it's almost like people don't want the RPG aspect of a covenant. They want something, you know, akin to other games where you can like fully customize your character based on like, you know, boss fights or challenges you're doing. And
Yeah.
it's like they want WoW to be a different type of genre.
I've had people that I've boosted to get ahead of the curve for the mount, and then they can't hand in the quest because they don't have Rathian unlocked in the chamber. And
No,
Oh
no.
and then they come and ask me how to do that. And like something as simple as that is it's a wall for a new player. Because I can imagine maybe some of those people being a little bit embarrassed about not knowing, so they just simply don't ask, and then they never hand in the quest, and then, you know, they don't have the mount. So it's definitely
no.
quite difficult for casual players when there's so many different systems of things. There's
Yeah.
one more.
Going back to the
Yeah.
balancing. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was gonna go to the next thing, so you comment first.
Oh, well, right paw is. That was not what I was going to say. Ow, right paw. Ow, 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 ow.
Oh, yeah.
Um, what was I going to say? It was something about conduits, and then Brightpaw stepped on my arm.
Aw.
So I have forgotten. I was gonna say, like, they're trying to make things more complicated, but then like you have simulations which have gotten more sophisticated over time, and you know you have sites like Rebots that do a good job of breaking things
Oh
down,
yeah.
or you have blood mallet charts and they get more and more sophisticated and present things. It's like it's funny, as the systems get more complex, their UIs get better, so sims have gotten easier to understand as time has gone on. So Blizzard might try to make something complicated, but as long as you have third parties explaining it, they're always going to try to find a solution for this.
There's always gonna be a meta.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I was.
Okay, I said my thing. You
Yeah.
can
Perfect.
go on to
I'm
your
glad you
part.
remembered it. I was going to mention one last point from Ian's post, which is the PvP vendors. You guys may have heard as well, there were many concerns about the PvP vendors, a very limited supply of different items, not a large variety of stats to choose from, and similar. If you want I don't remember the exact ones, but let's say you want haste versa for PvP, but then you look at that slot and maybe there's only crit mastery. I'm just making up stats now. I don't remember exactly which ones. And a lot of people were upset about this because then it feels like, well, you can't get the best items from playing PvP. What's the point? Then you have to go and raid and do Mythic Plus and all of that anyways for the best gear, and it doesn't feel right. And Ian is actually addressing this in this post and mentions that he or they have heard the feedback and that they do agree that currently it's not in the best state. Let me see if I can get an exact quote of what he said. Let's see. PvP.
It's towards the bottom, I think.
Yeah, PvP itemization here. The last comment on this is we are considering a few different solutions, such as reworking the stat coverage of the vendor gear and or providing PvP specific bonuses through those items. As soon as we've settled on a direction, we'll share our plan for feedback and get the changes up on beta for testing. So it sounds like they are potentially looking to change something, maybe get more stats available for choices, or maybe even choosing or adding a PvP stat as well. It sounds a little bit like it, or providing PvP specific bonuses, it says. I guess that doesn't have to be PvP stat, it could be PvP something else. Maybe PvP increased damage or something. But yeah, it will be interesting to see. It's very last minute. It's like Shadowlands is so close, and now they're looking at a new solution for PvP gear. It's a little bit disappointing that the PvPers haven't been able to look at gear at all until now, to now have this feedback.
Like, the forums went up super late for PvP, like just a few weeks ago, and it's kind of sad because I remember when Shadowlands Alpha was starting, they talked about vendors returning, and people were super hyped, like this was going to solve everything. They were very enthusiastic for the future of PvP, and now, you know, they stalled on it. They didn't have PvP focused testing. The forums went up late, and now they need to redo the PvP from scratch, which, you know, is really sad.
Yeah.
With how positively it started off in April.
And then on top of this, we have the PvP scaling, which sometimes also makes it questionable whether something is an upgrade or not based on item level, and it's so complicated. Why can't we go back to simple PvP gear, remove scaling, and just your gear will do this damage and that's it? It doesn't matter if your opponent has higher or lower item level. That's how it should be.
I agree.
But yeah, I guess we'll see. Maybe this new change that they're planning might be an improvement, but I am a little bit worried about how that's going to turn out. Do you have any comments on the PvP system?
Yeah, I just always feel so bad for the PvP players because they just always have to do any sort of PvE content to get their best gear. And I totally understand when they complain about it, because I personally don't like PvP as much either. I don't mind if I have to do it once in a while to get, for example, the weekly conquest chest. That was fine for a while, but then at some point I could drop doing it because that chest was not as important as the weekly and plus chest, right? But for the PvP players, they almost always had to do the weekly and plus, even if they didn't like it at all, because it's such a high itemable item and you can't pass up on it, right? So I definitely, when I read this post, I was really looking forward for the PvP players, so they don't have to possibly get the PvE gear. And on top of that, I also like the change with the weekly chest that you can get your item from doing PvP only. But I just hope that they're gonna balance the difficulty level a little bit between M+, raiding, and PvP when it comes to this weekly vault. Because if it's really, really difficult to get the best item from PvP, like if you need a super, super high rating to get the best item, when in M+ you only have to do a plus 15, which in comparison is not as difficult as to get this high rating in PvP, then lots of PvP players are still gonna feel like they have to play M+ instead of doing the PvP because they can't get that high rating, right?
Yeah, that's
raid
true.
Loot is still being sorted out, which is reopening other discussions. For example, we made a post last night how the two end bosses have higher item level loot, including the weapon tokens from Castle Nathria, and it's unclear if the Great Vault can have these higher item level things or not. And the item level from these two end bosses is a higher reward than is possible from Mythic Plus and PvP from the Great Fall. So that's reopened the discussion of, oh, do you feel like you need to do the end of Castle Nathria to get good loot for Mythic Plus or PvP? And then this morning we data mined really early Castle Nathria trinkets, and there are some with interesting absorb effects. So a lot of people are now concerned that they may have to do Castle Nathria to get some overpowered trinket for PvP, like we saw with Crucible of Storms.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Uldir trinkets were out in the community super early, and these Nathria trinkets seem really incomplete, like they all have placeholder names,
Mm-hmm.
and the raid is pretty close by. So this is sort of just reopening the discussion as we find more gear quirks, more interesting procs that people were totally not aware of, and they're all wondering, like, do I need this for Mythic Plus? Do I need the absorb for PvP?
Mm-hmm.
I thought I didn't have to do PvE for PvP, and now I do.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there's a lot of confusion or anxiety surrounding that.
I feel like if it was only trinkets that people would need from raiding, it wouldn't be that bad. But the way that it was in BFA is if you wanted to min max and get the best stats, for example, if you want haste versatility on every single piece of item, then you're gonna want to raid. You may want the if you're not lucky in the Mythic Plus chest, because if you're lucky in the Mythic Plus chest, you just get everything from the Mythic Plus chest. But if you're not lucky, then you want that haste versa ring from Nazoth, or you want the I don't know, potentially a haste master. If you're building a haste mastery set, then you want that haste mastery piece from the raid as well, etc. And that means that PvPers who want a variety of gear or just a full set with one specific stat build have to raid to get that. And I think that's where it feels wrong. If it's PvE trinkets, I feel like that's okay. That's how it's been in the past too. And especially now that they're removing trinkets from being PvP talents into actual trinkets like in slots.
Right, you
that
only
that
need
does
one
limit.
OP one, not
Yeah,
two.
yeah. If well, you can take two, but then you're giving up, being able to trinket out of a CC of some sort. So it's an okay like trade-off, I think. But the main thing that I think was difficult for PvPers now wasn't just the trinkets, but it was also the general gear set, because there was a limited number of pieces that you could get from PvP already, and then the stats that you want maybe wasn't part of those choices.
I think that's well said, and I just wish that the read loot tables were more solidified in advance so people could analyze them to see if there's any potential problems or issues with them. Because it's, like I said, it is getting pretty late, and we don't have, the loot tables from the
Oh yeah.
bosses are still incomplete, and many people are like learning yesterday that, oh, the weapon from the final boss is higher item level. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that usually doesn't happen uh with maybe it happens like at the very end of the expansion where there's a final boss, but it usually doesn't happen with the first raid like Uldir. Like usually it's just the same item level throughout. So
Mm-hmm.
people have been kind of surprised between yesterday's item level post and today's trinket
Mm-hmm.
post. But yeah, very curious to see what the new PvP system will be.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where the direction is. I just randomly also remembered that there used to be a bonus for using two PvP trinkets, which was a 10% damage reduction, I believe. I don't remember which
Yeah.
expansion that was, but that's also an interesting thing. Sticking to PvP trinkets gives you a bonus, maybe both 10% damage reduction and 10% damage increase, maybe. I think that could also be interesting and give people an option, who aren't able to raid. But yeah,
Yeah.
let's move on to the next topic. But before we do that, let's first thank some people for supporting the channel. We have Taylor with the 8 months. Yes, 8 month subscription. Thank you so
Thank you.
much for that. We also have Wacken with the 13-month subscription and Verity with a fresh subscription to the channel. So thank you guys for that, for supporting Wowhead.
If you have any more questions, if we have time at the end, we will take questions from the chat on this. So,
Mm-hmm.
drop them in the chat if you still want us to go into Ian's thing because we are about to change topics and cover some other interesting news this week, like a secret was discovered, and we promised not a ton of lore on the show, but this was actually pretty big, so we're actually going to put a spoiler tag up for this next part.
Mm-hmm.
The one, like our one lore thing. I think it's important.
Yes. Let me put it
So
up.
let me know when it's up.
There we go. Spoiler tag is up. So if you don't want spoilers, you can mute the stream, and once that thing is away, you can unmute again.
Right. So we've had lots of lore things this past week, and we actually did a big collab with Novel. If you want to learn more about Dreadlords,
Oh, he's
maybe
in the chat.
Shadowlands. Hi, Novel.
Hi,
Hey.
Novel. Speaking of the devil.
Yeah. But we did want to highlight the fact that Turalyon is sitting on the throne in Stormwind. Do you know who Turalyon is, Naguura?
Don't put me in a spot like that. No, I don't.
Well, this is perfect because now you can introduce him. Mm-hmm.
So, in the Shadows Rising book, Anduin put Turalyon in charge of the Alliance forces and to manage in his absence. And now Anduin is stuck in the Shadowlands, so that means that Turalyon is ruling in his absence. But based on this picture, is he going too far? He is sitting on the throne, and lots of people, when we shared this picture, were like, "Oh my God, this is treason!" When Bolvar was taking care of Anduin when Varian was gone, like no one sat on the throne. This is really rude to sit on the throne when the king is still alive.
Oh, that's
so
interesting.
this has led
so
to
no one did
a
that
lot.
Before.
No, it was always empty.
So what do you think, Perk?
I think that it's kind of bad news, especially when, for two reasons. There's the Il'gynoth whisper about sitting on the golden throne, and usually old god whispers don't lead to anything good. And when you talk to him, he is talking about how he wants to rebuild the military and how winning the Stromgarde Warfront was really good, but maybe the Alliance could take over more lands, and that just sounds really not great, especially because we just formed a peace truce. And it just seems like he, instead of like handling the basics while Anduin is gone, he is sitting on the throne and he has his own agenda, so to speak. And in the book, he was doing some kind of sketchy things with Ilaria, where he was like interrogating and like torturing people, and Jaina was trying to tell him and Ilaria to stop, and they weren't really listening to her. And I don't know, I feel like there could be a lot of conflict if Anduin gets back to Stormwind and Turalyon is just chilling on this throne.
Yeah, that's an interesting detail.
I also really like how one lion is yelling. Like, if you look at the four lions, the one by his foot is yelling. I don't know, it just cracks me up. Like, get off my throne. It has its mouth open. But only one of them. Why does only one have its mouth open?
I didn't notice that before. Okay, I see. Yeah, the third lion has an open mouth.
Yeah.
Is it not like that normally?
I think it's always been that way. It just looks really funny.
Okay, yeah.
And
yeah.
like just the whole like the lion is yelling. And he's in like full plate armor with glow in the dark things, and he looks really uncomfortable. It just is a funny picture.
Yeah. I think this also ties in quite interesting with who was it who was telling Bolvar to take over? Or wait.
There was the Shaw and Greymane that we discussed last week. Did you mean that?
Yeah. That's it. Can you remind me what they talked about?
So, they were off by Varian's memorial, and Shaw was trying to hint to Greymane that, like, he's a king. Maybe he should be in the throne room instead. And Greymane, like, cut him off and was like, I want to respect Anduin's wishes. And usually Greymane is very much, like, blunt and, is very direct, doesn't back down. So it's like, is Greymane scared that like Turalyon could turn on him. Like, does he want to stay away from potential political drama? But from that exchange, you get the sense that Shaw thinks that like Turalyon is kind of overstepping by sitting on the throne.
Yeah, that's interesting. Once you put them together as well.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't
Seems
think
like
it's good
something
news
bad
he's
might
sitting on the
happen in
throne.
that case. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm kind of worried about this. Like, oh, we beat Shadowlands, and now Stormwind is like trying to take over Eastern Kingdoms. Everything's a mess when we get back out of the expansion.
Yep.
So maybe it's a good thing you are Horde Naguura if the Alliance questline could get, pretty messy soon.
I'm not sure how good it is to be Horde when we had Sylvanas,
I
right?
was gonna say, she's like, oh, we know all about that already.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah,
think
it's
that's
really
it for the spoiler part, maybe, or
Yeah, I think we're good on the spoiler part. That
Alright.
was basically it. And like I said, check out the lore collaboration with Novel. We have more Dreadlord stuff. I'm sure whenever Novel is back on the show, we will be discussing that in more detail. But we just thought this part was like important to share this week because it was pretty big.
definitely. I think you were in the middle of commenting something else too.
I think that the cat just came over.
Okay.
And I was distracted by the cat. I was gonna say that we were talking about Sylvanas. So it was like a good segue into the next magazine thing we wanted to discuss.
Oh yeah, Sylvanas.
Related to her.
Speaking of Sylvanas, we have the Jailer. So what was this all about? Apparently the Jailer model was in PC Gamer.
Yeah, so this is like, believe it or not, people buy actual magazines. And if you subscribe to PC Gamer, the November edition was sent in the mail. And in the article, we've got like a plain picture and then a cluttered picture. And you would get the plain cover if you subscribe early. And Blizzard has done this before. They'll, I guess, buy out the cover and have their art on the cover. They did this for BFA and I think Heroes of the Storm and D3. And now we see the Jailer. And like, we knew his model, but he looks like really gross here. Like, he's even more gross.
Yeah.
It's his CGI version.
It's so detailed, so creepy.
Yeah. What do you think of the Jailer's model, Naguura? Does he look like a big enough villain, or do you think he could be even grosser?
He could be even grosser. I think I'd win against him easy in a duel.
Oh. Your Moonkin leaves could, I don't know, hold him in place.
Nah, maybe not as a Moonkin.
Yeah.
You need to pick another class.
Yeah.
I did hear that Boomkins are looking kind of good in Shadowlands, but I don't know if the information was wrong.
That was very wrong. Who said that?
No. I don't know. Someone in my chat at some point.
That's please.
Oh no. So you'd play Feral to beat the Jailer?
Maybe Warlock.
Oh, Warlock. Okay.
Feral is not a good choice either.
All right, well, I can stand by that decision. Warlock is great. You're very welcome
and
to
he
the
likes
Warlock world.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, we'll take you in. You're welcome. We had there were the two versions. So you said one version was if you ordered early?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I think the other version is like the online version, or maybe if you actually go to a store and you buy it, which sounds like, I don't know, super boomer, like, oh, I went to the bookstore and I bought my magazine and I'm going to do all this offline.
Gotcha.
But yeah, this is 100% legitimate. The person that was sharing it approached Wowhead with more pictures of it, so it's not a Photoshop. And the cover is exciting because with the Jailer getting this very high definition treatment, it kind of implies that we are going to get more cinematics like we did in BFA of like, like the Sour Fang duel or Bolvar and Sylvanas. So maybe we'll get another little, story arc with the Jailer now.
Yeah, absolutely right. Didn't even think about that. Yeah. I think the high definition does definitely point towards that direction.
And we also got some pictures of the interior of the book, which if you wanted to pull up the choice and consequence, I think that's interesting because it ties back into the Covenant debate of they are really, doubling down on Covenant choice as a defining feature of the expansion. And like they have this, like a page in a magazine is devoted to one sentence talking about how the Covenant should matter as much as the race and class, which has led people to speculate that it takes time to create and print magazine, which means that if this was done in advance, it Blizzard can't really go back on this if they are
Oh, yeah,
setting
that's
this
a
in
good
motion
point.
several like months ago.
Yep, yep, yep. Because they
Like if
can't
this is
have these
already printed.
magazines tell you the choice matters, and then meanwhile in the game, actually, your choice doesn't matter anymore.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Like it looks almost ominous with like the fire behind it and Bolvar with his weapon, like, you will choose a covenant. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Bolvar, I'll choose it. um but yeah, I know a lot of people when they saw the cover were asking us what was inside, and there weren't too many new articles, but I did think that the like gigantic pages talking about you know Bolvar and choosing the Covenant were something that people would find noteworthy, that Blizzard is really into this idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a very
So
interesting thing to note for sure. See a cat walking into the room.
uh,
It's like, hi, Luna.
Brightpaw is
Okay.
out of the room,
I think
but
she's
maybe
gonna
he'll be back.
climb onto her tree. Looks like that's what
Aw.
she's doing. And speaking of cats, actually, we have a secret that's been solved after, what is it, a year?
Yeah, it is Jennifer, a
Mm-hmm.
very chonky, cute battle pet that is also turns void sometimes and says she wants to, uh, smell your delicious flesh.
Yep, not creepy at all. Very normal.
It is kind of like cats. Like if you pet them too much, then they're like, claws, do not pet.
Yeah, no, actually true. Actually true.
Yeah.
Wait, I need to.
So
Can you
yeah,
can you guys actually explain this to me? Just because I have no idea about any of this. Just
Yeah.
like a TLDR version of what's going on or what the secret is about.
Uh,
So there was a player who, as part of Make a Wish, Amara decided to use that to have a secret with Blizzard based on her own cat. And this was tied, there were many steps. And at first, the community didn't know the whole story, they just knew there was a secret. And then as time went on and things got stumped, she revealed more details, even making a fundraiser recently to reveal more clues, and the money would go to cancer treatment. And the step people were stuck on was there was a song named after her character, and the sheet music, if you were going to transcribe the song, was tied to the position of some how you're meant to organize some of the cat food in the Karazhan Opera House.
Okay.
Um, and that just took like a year for people to connect all the dots, because like there were certain rules, like you're meant to do things in game to solve puzzles, not things like data mining. So people were like, oh, there's data mine music, we can't use that because it's data mining. So there was a lot of like back and forth about theories or which to pursue. But yeah, recently with the extra clue and people looking at the sheet music, they arranged the food to look like the musical notes and solved this puzzle. And
How
the
did they arrange
reward
the
is
food?
uh, well, the opera house has tiles, so the
Okay.
idea is that you could like do a musical scale. So like like with the tiles you have the horizontal bars, and then with
Mm-hmm.
sheet music you also have the horizontal bars. So it's like, oh, this is a high note, put the food up at the top to represent the high note, stuff like that.
Okay.
mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Uh, And yeah, I mean, it is super complicated, but a lot of these puzzles are really like they're all complicated in different ways. Like I remember one puzzle, the clues were in the Chronicle book.
Oh,
And it's like,
that's not
and
even in the game.
Yeah.
yeah, and you had to like use the maps in Chronicle or certain pages. Like one clue was tied to the ISBN number, like the publishing book number. Like
Wow.
very obscure
Oh.
stuff like that. So, yeah, people get together. There's pages of theories. The person who I think was publicized the sheet music idea has a Google Doc that's like pages long explaining
Oh,
the
wow.
music theory behind it, Paul.
Yeah.
We have a full guide to this, and we've also linked to some of the theories and explanations because it is really fascinating to read. But once it's solved, it's not too complicated, I think, to
Yeah,
do. You
because
just
then you
need to
just
go in a
follow the
caravan,
steps, right? Yeah.
yeah, get the food, put it in the right order, and then you get this really cute cat.
Mm-hmm. So if we want to do it, it might take us 15-20 minutes. If you want to be one of the
Yeah.
original people, then it took a year.
Yeah.
That's how it is. Yeah, I don't know how familiar you are with the secret finding Discord and things like that. It's basically a lot of people who dedicate a lot of time solving these kind of puzzles. Like, did you ever do the Lucid Nightmare mount, for example? No.
No, I didn't, but I heard
You heard
how
about the
difficult that
maze?
was to figure out as well. Yeah, and the
Yeah, yeah,
maze.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so these kind of secrets happen in different expansions. Like, usually the end goal of it is just to get something, something cosmetic, like a mount or a pet or similar. And this was one of the secrets here in the latest expansion. And I think it's the first time that it took this long to solve one thing. Um, because you have to consider that there is probably thousands of people who have, put their input into it, and it still took this long to solve it.
that's
Didn't
crazy. But
have
I
too
really
many
love that
steps.
they are doing this. I really love that they're putting this in the game. It's just so cool.
It is really cool.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a really cute cat as well, and it's cool that the teenager behind this could have asked for anything and did something that also raised awareness
Hmm.
about this. So
For sure.
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah. It
Hmm.
would be interesting. I know sometimes when the secret is solved, the developers try to like explain the clues, and if something they're like, oh, we thought this would be easy, and the community was stumped. So I'm curious how they're going to explain like the music or like why people are so stumped
Mm-hmm.
on the sheet music part.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, you can go get your very cute cat.
Yep. I can go pick it up. And then we have our last topic of the evening, potential hints at a TBC classic. So
Yeah.
you guys at Wowhead found some encrypted pet, right?
Yeah, we have encrypted data for pet, and then
Mm-hmm.
an update last week added an icon name for it. So we don't know what it looks like, but the icon name is called Dragon Whelp Outland Light,
Mm-hmm.
which, and based on past naming things, it could be a red herring, but normally the icon name gives a hint as to what the item will be. And we've used icons and names to predict a lot of the BFA like shop and BlizzCon digital rewards before.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like there is some sort of Outland themed whelp, which of course makes people think of the Nether whelp from the TBC collector's edition. Which of course then makes people say, hey, remember there was that classic Burning Crusade survey, several months ago. Could this be some sort of like reward for, I don't know, logging on to Burning Crusade as an incentive? Is this proof that it's coming? Why would Blizzard, create a pet that specifically references Outland? Because we're not going to Outland and
Yeah,
Shadowlands. It's
it's
not
not
really
relevant right
thematically
now.
related.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like it's relevant in Classic or in Classic's future, but
Mhm.
it's not relevant to anything in the game that we're playing. Like we're going to Shadowlands. Like we don't care about Outland right now. So it's very interesting with the timing here of this new pet.
Yeah. So what do you think? Do you think that I know Annie still plays Classic. I'm not sure how much you got into Classic Naguura. Do you think that this could be tied to TBC Classic? Do you have any feelings on this either way? Like were you a big Classic person at launch or did you never really get into it and just keys?
I actually played a lot of Classic when it came out for the first couple of months, until because I'm really into high end PVE and all this like competitive PVE style, and that's just really not something that was possible in Classic, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
because we all got much better and everything is just a repeat. So
Mm.
I lost interest at some point, but I always wondered what exactly they're gonna do with Burning Crusade, or if this is it gonna be Classic forever? Is there gonna be Burning Crusade? I just thought it's like a very interesting thing to think about because lots of people really only wanted Classic and not any other expansions, right? But then there's also some
Right.
people who only want to play Burning Crusade. Other people only want to play Wrath of the Lich King,
Yeah.
and so on, right? So what's going to be the solution for this? You can just maybe you keep Classic and then introduce new Burning Crusade servers. That would be really weird because you divide the player base even more. So what's going to be the solution for this? And now with this whelp, it really looks like it's hinting towards them introducing Burning Crusade. And to be honest, I feel like it would make sense for them to do it if they feel like the hype for Classic is not the way they want it anymore. Maybe they want to introduce something new. If there's like a downtime in Shadowlands, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could see. I almost wonder if they'll do something like, Classic one year, Shadowlands next year, and then like when Shadowlands hits, 9.2 whatever, then they launch TBC Classic, and then the year after that we get another expansion, and then like 3 years from now we get Wrath Classic.
Yeah,
Uh, like, oh, we
yeah,
defeated Arthas in Shadowlands. Now you can relive Wrath. Um, but I mean, I feel like they have hinted that now that they've got the like archival tech set up, they could easily go back and bring past games to life. So maybe Classic took a while to set up, but maybe spinning up TBC would be easier. I would just hope that they would learn from Classic. Like Classic has so many issues with bots,
oh
to
yeah,
the point, and like if you're a high end player, you feel like Classic is too easy, and all there is to do is speed runs. But then if you're a casual player, you don't have that community leveling experience because the leveling experience is just like do stuff with bots, or like run a dungeon like a billion times for the XP, and it's not really recreating the vanilla experience. So I'm hoping that they could see why like the classic hype didn't have longevity, and try to uh make it more welcoming for Burning Crusade, because it's really like, even I don't think like Kotaku and Polygon have written articles like, we tried to level in Classic a year after it came out and it's a ghost town, and it's like, that's really sad.
Yeah.
Like that was the defining
yeah,
feature of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because people have different expectations nowadays. People are not expecting
Yeah.
to stay level 35 forever. A lot of people, when you ask them, did you play Classic? Yeah, I got to level 37 or something. And that's an experience of its own. Whereas now, if you didn't get to max level, you didn't play. Like that's the
Right.
way that people see it.
I mean,
We
like
expect more.
they've banned so many bots. Like you would just hope that you don't want Burning Crusade to be plagued with the same issues, because that affects the economy. That affects who you find in dungeon groups. It just messes everything up.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I think that Burning Crusade could make sense, and I could also. I mean, I know there was the rumor being like Nax December, Burning Crusade announced March. I don't know how true that is, because in December usually employees go on vacation, like they don't do beta updates then. And we've seen with AQ, like there were a lot of classic bugs that needed to be addressed, so I don't think they would launch it when they're not in the office. But I do think that if we're getting a replacement BlizzCon in the spring, maybe not as big, but something,
Mm-hmm.
I could see them, using
Announcing.
that to announce Burning
Yeah.
Crusade as something for hype, and then maybe like Classic, they announce it, and then if you subscribe digitally, you get to, I don't know, play a zone or something for a week.
Yeah. Yeah, probably. I think that's very possible, actually. Do you think you would level in, or do you think you would play TBC Classic, Nagura?
it's so hard to tell because I think Burning Crusade was actually one of my most favorite, if not my most
Yeah.
favorite expansion to play.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I obviously understand that lots of it just comes from me playing the game for the first time and
Mm-hmm.
getting really into it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wonder if replaying it will ruin this whole experience that I had back then or my memories, because it kind of happened to me with Classic. Even though
Yeah.
when I played Classic, I was really young, so I don't remember a lot of it. But the things that I did remember were completely different when I played it again this time around. And I just had so many negative experiences when I played Classic again, that I just feel like maybe I'm not even gonna look into Burning Crusade, because I just feel like it might just be the same thing as what happened to me in Classic.
Yeah. No, I
I
think that's
get that.
completely understandable.
Like, I had a really good raiding experience in Wrath, and I just sort of wanted to end that on a high note. Whenever people would be like in Kata or Mob, like, oh, let's get a small group to, like farm Yogg or like Lich King for mounts, I would be like, let me bring my alt because I just on my main, I just wanted that, final memory to be really good of like, us, us farming all the mounts for everyone in the guild, ending on a high rank. Like I didn't it would feel weird to go back on that character and be like, okay, like now it's like easy and weird and different. I just wanted to have that like nice, memory filed
Mm.
away. And it's sort of like maybe you lived in an area and like you think it's really great and you come back like 10 years later and you're like, oh, like it looks different and then like you just feel sad. So I get where you're coming from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it makes total sense. I think TBC is very interesting compared to just classic vanilla because of the ad systems, like PvP systems and things like that. So I
Yeah,
think
Arena.
because of that, I think it might overall be more popular than classic. But I definitely understand people who feel like they may not even want to play at all just to preserve their
Because of problems
vision.
in classic.
What's that? Sorry?
I was gonna say also problems in classic too.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
if you'd be like, oh, like I just encountered bots in classic, I'll encounter bots in TBC,
Yeah,
or
that's
like
another
the
thing too.
community has
Yeah.
changed. Yeah.
Yeah, bot problems I think will be worse now compared to back then, for sure. Because people know now what is efficient, and then they start making
Mm,
characters that do exactly that. Like I
yeah.
think the one of the later trends, maybe it's not a late trend, maybe I'm just late to know about it, is like creating all these rogues that are stealthing through I think BRD and just um, pickpocketing and making lots and lots of gold. So you see all
I mean,
these
that
rogues.
was always a thing, but I think people didn't optimize as much. But I mean,
I
that
guess
that
yeah,
was
that makes sense.
people weren't as good, and like things just took longer,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's down to
Super
a
efficiency.
science.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like mage, AoE grinding in a dungeon because the experience is like maybe not exactly how it was in classic. So you just AoE grind
Mm-hmm.
in a dungeon
Mm-hmm.
and you don't even experience all these wonderful quests.
Yep.
Yeah, that reminds me of Black Temple. I used to play a paladin, and back then we had this ability that you would sacrifice yourself to bubble another player. I forgot what it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Divine intervention.
Divine
yeah,
intervention, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And there was this one really cool thing in Black Temple where you could go in the raid with only a paladin and one more player, and then you would walk all the way up to this top left boss that I forgot the name of, where you have the ghosts that you need to control. Do you remember?
Terran Gorfield.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah,
And in
the
that
mini game.
area,
Mm-hmm.
you could run up, do divine intervention, your other friend. That person then rests you, and then there were some non-elite mobs that you could kill. They were not, didn't have a lot of HP, and they would drop gems and raid loot that you could then sell in the auction house. And that was
Mm.
something that I did a lot, and I was so happy about it. I was like, "Oh my god, this is this cool thing, and I'm gonna be rich. I have so much gold, and I can do all these
I'm
gems."
gonna be
Right?
rich.
And I just feel like that's such a like nice memory I still have from Burning Crusade, and I feel like everyone's gonna know when Burning Crusade comes out, and they're just gonna do it much better with not just like a paladin and some other player, but they're
Yeah.
just gonna run in, and then the prices are gonna drop because everyone's gonna do it, right? So that
Gearing
experience not
set,
gonna
like
happen again.
special speed set to run to the top, and like two-person duo farming set. It's gonna be so
Yeah.
optimized.
Yep. Yes, I think that's what it is. When we have enough knowledge to maximize efficiency or just min max everything about it, it removes the mystery and the excitement of feeling like you've discovered something that not everybody knows. I think that's something that you can't really remake. It's something which is only really possible when something is new and fresh because no one else has done the calculations and put together a perfect way of doing this exact thing. And I think that mystery is what made TBC and Classic the most fun for people who played back then.
Yeah, and if you overgear something, then it just becomes about the speed run, which is obviously very interesting with Mythic Plus, but it's a little weird how it's basically about like getting the gear and just optimizing the path versus caring about any of the boss mechanics. Like I was watching the raids take down AQ, and the most interesting thing I found was the Visitus, because they were actually wiping because Visitus was bugged and he was harder, and they actually had to care about things like, you know, frost damage and proper gearing, as opposed to just like, okay, now we're gonna wait for this to pack so we can all like run through and we're gonna take this down before he does this cool ability. And it's like, well, my classic memory was like Huhuron, they didn't need to put nature resistance on. It was just like, oh, consumables, go, go, go. And it's like, well, I remember that was like a huge deal that you needed the resistance and the whole guild had to farm it. And, I was really excited to be chosen as a soaker because I worked hard to get my nature resistance. And, you just lose something when it all, the bosses just fall over. And yeah, it's just about like a gearing game and then getting your world buffs and logging out for the week so you can, log back in and have them the next week. Like I know people that still have their holiday foods on and they just log off to preserve their holiday food buffs.
I still have my 10% damage buff for my raid on Friday, so I can't log in too much before then.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, it's true. That's how it is. I'm sure this was not as optimized back then because number one, not everyone really knew about how to optimize, and like people just didn't care. The end game wasn't to beat everything as efficient as possible. The end game was to get together and try to make some progress from last time. And that's it.
I think that's about it for our show notes. We know it's super late for you, Naguura. So thank you for doing this show, even though the timing is not ideal for you. We're really happy you were on, and you had a lot of
thank you
really
so much for having me.
PvE insights. So
even though I don't really know anything about the lore, but I learned some things today.
Nice, that's awesome.
Now you can beat Tettles in a lore duo.
Oh yes, I can. Yeah, we should do a lore quiz now.
Tettles on Jaina, Naguura on Turalyon.
Indeed. Yeah, no, I feel like with Perk around, I learned something every show as well. So I know that feeling. I've learned a lot because of Perk, so I have that going for me. Yeah, it is late here in EU, so it's going to be a good time to wrap up the show. I have kept track with most of the chat. I don't think there was any particular questions that we hadn't already sort of touched in one way or another, but if you can think of any question that you want to quickly drop, we might be able to answer that. Otherwise, we'll be back next week, same time as usual, so not like today. Today we started an hour earlier, but we'll be back at normal time, which is 10 p.m. CST and 1 p.m. PST. The pre-patch date has not been confirmed. We don't know. Our best guess is that it'll be announced in the next 2-3 days to be the 2-week window for pre-patch. So pre-patch would then be on the 29th of August. Sorry, not August, September.
Wow, oh no, it already has been live for a month.
We missed it.
Yeah, no, it's not been live for 2 weeks already. No. But it's a speculation from our side. We don't actually know the exact date. We'll see what Blizzard decides to cook up for us to see very soon. One quick question, main for Shadowlands. Naguura, do you want to answer first?
I'm gonna be maining Moonkin.
Alright, so continuing the Moonkin path. I think that sounds like a good idea. I will be continuing my Warlock path. I've played Warlock since day one, so I'll continue with that. In this expansion, I had quite fun with it, so hopefully I'll have a good Warlock expansion next expansion too. What about you, Perk?
Choosing between the Demon Hunter and the Rogue, but probably going back to the Rogue because that was my first character, and doing the Night Fae Covenant because I don't do endgame PvE because my job is running the site and not streaming the raids, so I can fortunately just focus on the story I want to do, which is the seeing what happens next for the Night Elves and having my, relaxing garden covenant.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense. World of Warcraft is a huge time investment, and if you can't really play it that much, then it's hard to experience the full thing properly.
So I don't need to stress myself out with conduit swapping, although I want, people who
Then you'll write
play
about it
more,
instead.
like you and Naguura. I want other people to be happy as well,
Yeah.
even if I'm not the target audience that would necessarily care about that as much.
And if there's any warlocks watching, the warlock affliction is being sort of built back to how it used to be with no stacking unstable affliction. So that's going to be something that I'm looking forward to as well, since I've mainly been playing Destro lately. It's going to be nice to go back to affliction. Yeah, and one last comment, a nice comment in the chat, so I thought I'd read it. Just want to say you are 3 awesome ladies. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Aww.
Did you want to show the tweet, Annie? I don't know if you saw it. I know Naguura saw it. Johnny One Lung did a funny Powerpuff Girl
I didn't
image
see that,
of
no.
us.
Is it as a response to the live show, or?
We tweeted it on Wowhead. Check the Discord chat with the too.
Oh, I see.
Katsuki
Oh!
Yeah.
That's so good.
So
Okay,
good,
I
yeah.
need to retweet this.
Yeah.
Let me drag this onto here so I can show it quick. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wait, there we go. Open picture here, drag it in. That's so funny because growing up, obviously red is not my natural hair color, but growing up I always wanted to be the red one. Like me and my sisters, we would like role play games together, and I would always be Blossom. Here we go. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Blossom,
Thank
Bubbles, and
making...
Buttercup. Thank you for making this image.
Yep.
I love it.
Now I just need to dress the 3 cats up as Powerpuffs, and we can have cats always.
True.
True. Yeah.
Yep. Well, that's it from us today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to check out Naguura's socials. Wait, I'm pointing the wrong direction. That way. She's Naguura on Twitter. She's Naguura on Twitch as well. Did I say Twitter twice? No, Twitter and Twitch, yes. And sometimes you catch her on the Warcraft channel as well for some professional casting of MDIs. Again, Naguura, thank you so much for taking your time to join us here.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a lot of fun.
Naguura is amazing. And hearts in the chat. Perfect.
Yeah.
Are we going to try and do a high five?
Oh, we can. Which direction are we this time?
Opposite you, Perk.
Okay, so Naguura needs to you
Naguura was right side. Yes.
Yes. And you need both hands because there's 2 of us. So there's like 2 of us here and then like you're there. So
Perfect.
yeah. Like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll do the countdown because you guys will hear me with the same delay. Okay?
Okay. Yep.
3, 2, 1. Way! Perfect timing.
Yay.
We did it. See you all next week. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.